So do you believe in Santa? There was a time when I was certain, just as certain as Jabez Dawes, that Santa was nothing more than make-believe. My certainty came about when I was 9, but I'd been putting the pieces together for years. As far back as I can remember, I'd seen the drawings and heard the stories about how he entered houses. But the first house of my childhood, we didn't have a fireplace, at least not a real one. Each December, my mom did put together a store-bought cardboard fireplace upon which we would hang our stockings. It even had a cardboard fire, which flickered with the help of a light bulb and a turning wheel of colored plastic. Some of you had this fireplace too, I guess. The thought of a large man entering our house through that cardboard portal was hard to fathom, even for a 5-year-old. I remember asking, how does he get in? My mom did not deny my logic and countered, he comes in through the door. Her answer made sense. That whole chimney thing seemed a little far-fetched anyway. Around this time, I noted that the tags on the presents that appeared under the tree on Christmas morning in our house read, "From Mom and Dad." In fact, nothing under our tree was labeled "From Santa." Why does he bring presents from you and none from him? I asked. As I recall, my dad offered a simple response. That's a good question, he said. And that was it. I started paying attention to how my brother, 3 years my senior, and my parents would discuss the treats that would be left for Santa on Christmas Eve. One year, when milk and cookies gave way to beer and pretzels, I had to wonder some more about the kind of guy who was going to come into our house in the middle of the night to drop off presents from my parents. The delight my brother and father displayed on Christmas morning at the written response left behind was an indication that they were in on a joke that I didn't fully comprehend. A note was scrawled near the empty pretzel bowl and the unopened beer can saying, "Thanks, but I don't drink and drive." A few years later, I realized Santa was showing up at more than one store around town, sometimes on the same day, and that beyond the red suit and the white beard, he would look different each time. Again, I questioned my parents. He must have helpers, they said. Well, of course, I reasoned. With so many children who wanted to visit with him before Christmas, he had no choice but to get stand-ins. I could do the math. And that math carried over to the logistics of worldwide present delivery, too. No way could this guy be everywhere at once. And so that Christmas, I listened as carefully as I could for the sound of reindeer paws and a midnight visitor who, to my ears and limited understandings anyway, never showed up, even if the presents did. My certainty was sealed. I didn't discuss my decision to disbelieve with my parents. I didn't want to spoil their fun. Besides, I had a younger sister who still expected that Santa was real. And just as my brother had not imposed his truth on me, I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news. But my protection of the story within my family did not extend to the wider world. In fact, one day on the school bus the following fall, when the subject came up, I must have been trumpeting my newfound certainty with more zeal than I realized, for suddenly the bus was pulled over to the side of the road and brought to a halt. The driver, a wiry young man with long hair and a slight beard, called out to me. "Hey, you," he said, "come here. We need to talk." He escorted me off the bus, turned to face me, verbally grabbing me by the shirt. "What is wrong with you?" he hissed. Sensing this was not a safe situation, I decided silence was my best response. He called me a few names like Big Shot and Jerk, before asking, "Why are you trying to ruin Christmas for little kids?" His monologue continued for what seemed like a long time before ending with, "If you're going to ride my bus, you're going to keep your ideas about Santa to yourself. Got it?" Wanting to get home, I nodded my acceptance of his conditions. Back in my seat, I simmered in anger and defensiveness. Why was I the villain? I was just offering the truth as I understood it. Didn't the truth matter? Still, even before I made it home, I knew the driver had a point. There could be a cost to my cocky need to proclaim my truth for all to hear. And it wasn't just my humiliation at being taken off the bus and being threatened by the driver. The cost was that others might get hurt by my declarations too. Maybe other families wouldn't appreciate me sharing my thoughts on Santa with their children. Maybe I didn't have a right to be such a show-off, even if I thought I had the truth. I accepted that there is a time and place for this kind of brutal honesty, and I, on this ride at least, had crossed a line. After all, I wouldn't want some wise guy trying to steal my family's fun. Over the years, I've thought a lot about that roadside encounter. Who knows for sure what prompted the driver to let me have it? Maybe he was seeking vengeance for innocence that was stolen from him too early. Maybe he thought it was his job as the only adult on the bus to censor me, since he might hear about it from parents if he didn't. Whatever the reason, I still think his determination to silence me was a bit over the top. He could have just let us kids work it out, the way kids always have. Haven't there always been Santa deniers debating with Santa believers, just as there have always been playground atheists going head-to-head with playground theists? Ideas are debated, feelings sometimes get hurt, lessons are learned, life goes on. I would argue the driver's actions were just as obnoxious as mine had been, perhaps more so. And yet I've come to believe that his drive to protect the innocence of others was noble in its way, at least as noble as was my need to speak the truth as I understood it. Now that many years have passed and I have children of my own, I have more compassion for the complexities of how to navigate the story of the jolly old elf. I've had to decide, just as all parents do, should I welcome the tale, preserving the Santa innocence of my daughters as long as possible, or should I effectively bolt the doors and cement the chimney of our house against the intrusion of this mythology into their lives? As is the case with other cultural oddities passed down through the generations, Susan and I have chosen to follow the traditions of our families. I haven't kept Santa from coming, but I haven't exactly invited him to come either. We could say that I've informed Santa that he doesn't have to come to our house. The world's a big place. Surely there are others who need him more than we do. I've assured him we'll take care of our own gifts. Still, I've let him know that if he works something out with my wife and daughters to be a gift bearer from time to time, I'm okay with that. And so over the years, when daughter Leah has asked me questions about Santa, I have typically responded the same way I answer her questions about God. I've shared the different ideas out there the best I can, before closing with, some people believe, some people don't, you get to decide. Now, you may think it's wrong-headed to answer a child's questions about Santa and God as though they are similar ideas. Santa, we might say, is innocuous, nothing but lighthearted fun, basically harmless. And when people talk about Santa, they have enough agreement about who and what Santa is that there's little confusion. Now, God, on the other hand, is not simply a playful cultural notion for most of us, a cartoony character who exists to bring joy to children during the holidays. History shows us that God, as an idea anyway, has been created, translated, and sometimes manipulated by those seeking to dominate or control other people. Like Santa, God is sometimes perceived as a gift-wielding Superman who bestows and withholds presents based on whether or not we have been naughty or nice. But that's not the only way people think about God. Indeed, about the only thing we can say with objective confidence about the nature of God is that humanity's different and often contrasting ideas about him, her, or it have led to war, have led to oppression, and a host of other unpleasant realities, as we humans have wrestled with our need for power, or our fear of death, or our desperation for certainty about things that will always be uncertain at best. And so you may be wondering, what do Santa and God really have in common? Perhaps a bit more than we may think. A few years ago, our denominational magazine, the UU World, published a piece by Gilly English Bishop. She's a UU from Colorado. In her essay, written as a letter to her children, Bishop comes clean to her kids that she doesn't believe in Santa the way that many do. She says for her, Santa is not a boss running a toy-making business at the top of the world. He is actually a bunch of imperfect parents and relatives, busy earning enough money to live, sometimes annoyed by their imperfect kids, but still able to find the love and time and money to make Christmas magical for them. Santa is not one guy looking down on us, trying to make things right for all the good kids, she says. Santa is a network of families, each with different situations, different amounts of money, different traditions, different feelings about what their kids need or can handle. Now, I appreciate her explanation of Santa as a holiday season metaphor for the interconnected web. She reminds me yet again that focusing exclusively on literal truth often comes at the expense of metaphorical truth. And as poets and storytellers and faithful folks of all religious backgrounds have known throughout human history, metaphorical truth has much to offer us as we make our ways through a life with abundant mystery and possibility, a life with more than its share of joy and sorrow. In the letter to her kids, Bishop then pivots to an explanation of her understanding of God. She writes, "It would be nice to believe that there's a guy up in the sky who gives us exactly what we need. It would be nice to think that if we're good, we'll get a reward. It would be nice to think that someone who loves us is in control of everything, but we know the world isn't fair." And so she's come to an understanding of God that is similar to the conclusion she has drawn about Santa. She writes, "God is not a guy looking down on us, trying to make things right for everyone who he thinks deserves it. God," she says, "is the interconnected web of life. Every living thing in this web has different needs, different desires, different ways of affecting the rest of the web, just like every family that celebrates Christmas does it a little differently." Now, you may quibble with her definition of God, especially in a world where God is sometimes named as the inspiration of behavior that denies, if not destroys, the interconnected web. You may question why we would want to use the word at all if it can bring about so much confusion. And I understand. The truth is, I rarely use the word myself, and yet I'll admit that Bishop's understanding of the God she does believe in is more inspiring and useful to me than many I have heard. In a world where God continues to be offered into the conversation as a symbol for that which is most important in life, I appreciate her framing of a God whose actions are the cumulative impact of our actions, my actions, your actions, a God that doesn't simply act upon us or for us, but a God that requires our careful and connected participation in order to exist. Just as the Santa she describes won't show up if we adults are merely waiting for the presents to arrive without doing our part to put them under the tree, neither will this God. She writes, "Just like we make the magic of Christmas for each other, we make the magic of life for each other too. Every day, even as a kid, you make choices about how to treat people, how to treat the earth and its creatures, what to do with your time. Every choice you make has some effect on the interconnected web of life. You are an important and beloved part of it." We all are. We all are. And we make the magic of life even when things may seem most bleak. Even when those bent on destruction can take away that which is most important to us. And so this Christmas, I will continue to welcome my responsibilities in the creation of a Santa that is an expression of my family's love and maybe your family's love, and our shared desire for happy, healthy children who know what it means to be held by a magical, loving, interconnected, and therefore real embrace. And I will also accept my role in the bringing to life of a creative and tenacious spirit, a compassionate commitment to our interconnected web, a God, if you will, that comes about when we prioritize loving, compassionate relationships with those around us, when we don't give in to our cynicism too quickly, when we know that we cannot do everything, but still we do not refuse to do the things we can do. The God that arises from our best thinking and our most loving expectations of ourselves and others. The God that is expressed whenever we seek the most good for the most people. The God that arrives when we truly affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person and the interdependent web of all existence. For as it is with Santa, so may it be with God, at least as I have come to understand them both. beliefs that don't lead to actions that nurture the interdependent web, won't put the gifts that matter most under the tree, or offer much divine presence in our hurting world. The divine presence that is, after all, ours to help deliver. As Bishop writes to her children and to us all, always remember that you are Santa and God for other people, and other people are Santa and God for you. I have let you in on the secret truth about Santa and God as I understand them. You are one of us now. Put all the love and magic you can into your duties as Santa and into your little corner of God. What a world we could help create if we did. What a world indeed.